you and welcome to you all this evening. This is, I think, our second session of the week. We're running these sessions every day with different colleges, and the idea was that we want to be able to kind of come out and speak directly to members and give you as much information and answer as many questions as we can that you may have about the registration process. So it's great to have you all here. Thank you for making the time, because I know what it can sometimes be like at the end of the day, and especially on a Tuesday. So, so you're all very welcome. In terms of the outline of the session, we thought we'd take a wee bit of time and look at the registration journey so far, because I'm aware that some of you may be familiar with the rationale behind GTCS registration, some of you may be less so. So we'll take a wee look at that journey and where we've got to. We'll then look at some of the reasons why EIS-FELA has been pushing for GTCS registration for so long, and the work that it's done to bring this to fruition. And then Derek is going to take us through some of the practical processes that will be involved in GTCS registration, and particularly for you as individuals and what you have to do as part of that registration process over the next few months. We'll then look at what happens after registration, and a bit about professional learning and the professional update, but we're not going to focus greatly on that tonight, because that's something that we'll dedicate specific training sessions for further down the line once we've actually got registration underway and people are actually on the register, and it should be more meaningful when you've actually had access to your own professional learning accounts. And then finally, we're going to have a question and answer session. Now, I can't see the chat at the minute because I'm sharing the slides, but Anne-Marie and Derek are monitoring the chat. So if you have any questions as we go along, feel free to put the questions in the chat and we'll pick those up at the end and try and get through as many as we can in this session. So kicking us off with the why registration, I wanted to look a bit at the contractual underpinning of the registration process. Now, as many of you will know, that professional registration has been a long-standing FELA policy. It's been debated at many annual conferences, and that desire to have the professionalism of college lecturers recognised has been something that has really driven the demand for registration from an EIS-FELA point of view for a number of years. When we were looking at negotiating the national terms and conditions and the pay awards back in 2017, we fought for and finally won that commitment for GTCS registration, and the commitment is in the May and November 2017 agreements. Now, you might have first become aware of it through the NGNC Circular 0318, and for those of you who've looked at that, you'll notice that it refers to college lecturers being registered with a body similar to GTCS. Now, at that stage, there was a lot more work to be done in actually translating what that commitment looked like in reality. And so it was only when we had the National Working Practices Agreement that we were actually able to dovetail that and to firm out the commitment. And finally, we got that in Circular 0319. I'm getting a wee bit of feedback. Can everybody just check that they're on mute at the minute, just so that it's clearer? Thanks. So the commitment in Circular 0319 is actually captured on the bottom part of the slide, which refers to lecturing staff requiring professional registration with the General Teaching Council for Scotland. And I think the important sentence comes after that, where it says professional registration is a mark of teaching professionalism and will raise the status and standing of lecturer professionalism in colleges. And it's that sentence that captures the drive that FELA had to finally have your commitment as teaching professionals recognised. Now, the result of these agreements is that there is now a contractual requirement for college lecturers to register with the GTCS. And in December 2018, there was a cross-sector working group established to take forward college lecturer registration. Now, for any of you who are here who are part of the FELA executive, you'll be familiar with the group. For those of you who are not, it's referred to as the College Lecturer Registration Working Group, and I provide monthly updates to the FELA executive about the progress that's made within that working group. The group is chaired by GTCS, and it's got membership from FELA, Colleges Scotland, the Scottish Government, and importantly from the university providers of TQFE, because they've got an important role to play in this process. And over the past 3 years, we have been working really hard to bring those 2 sentences that you see in that slide into reality. And I have to say that I think when we made that agreement back in 2017, we didn't foresee all the complexities that were involved in bringing GTCS registration to light. So sometimes it has felt a wee bit like pushing that big rock up the hill. But I have to say everybody on the group has been working collegiately and together to look at how we can drive forward this process. So the group has been working on routes to registration, and we were keen that we reflected the diverse nature of the lecturing profession within colleges, whilst also maintaining the integrity of the register of teachers. And there was an acknowledgement from word go that this was very different from registration of school teachers. You know, obviously school teachers have a pre-service model of qualification. They then do a period of service in schools before they are given full registration. But there was an acknowledgement that the college sector is rightly different, because the employers and the students and yourselves are all recognising the different expertise that you bring as college lecturers. You're bringing experience from industry, a different set of skills, and are developing and harnessing and honing your teaching skills in service and while you're delivering and on the job. So we had to look at how we could take the current rules and the registration pathways and deliver that in the college sector. So as I've indicated, there was a real desire to make sure that we weren't shoehorning college lecturers into a school model, that we wanted our own bespoke model. And part of that has meant that the group has had to look at the challenges that have been presented towards registration. So as a group, we have looked at a number of things around entry to the TQFE. Obviously, TQFE currently is the central process through which college lecturers can gain entry to the register of teachers. So we've stripped that right back and looked at, well, what are the current entry qualifications for TQFE? Where do the anomalies lie? And you will all know that there are a number of anomalies in terms of the entry requirements. We have made recommendations to government around a refresh of those requirements, because government hold the TQFE and all things to do with that qualification lie with them. We've also looked at the backlog of lecturers who are waiting to undertake TQFE and the potential challenges that poses in driving through the process. And we've also been looking at different pathways and how we can provide those to meet the range of needs which the lecturing profession has to offer. So you can see already that only by referencing some of those issues, that taking those 2 sentences in the agreement and actually bringing it into reality has been a lot of work and has presented some challenges. So some of you might be thinking, well, if it presents so many challenges, why do we want professional registration? Now, as I referred to earlier on, it has been long-standing FELA policy, and it has been long-standing FELA policy for a reason, and that's because we have been very keen to have your professional recognition recognised. Day in and day out, college lecturers are serving a vast array of learning needs with their college students from many different backgrounds. And not only are you teaching and keeping abreast of current developments in pedagogy, you're also looking at keeping abreast of your own industry expertise. So you've got that dual professionalism that you're maintaining. So FELA have for a long time felt that it's really important that that professionalism is recognised as a distinct element of the education forum and other professionals within it. Now, when I was preparing for this session, I was also reflecting on the action which you all took earlier this year with a national level, and I know that many of you from Forth Valley College will be here, and that industrial action to stop the de-skilling of the profession. And when I was reflecting on that, I thought many of the arguments that were used in relation to that industrial dispute were focusing on the quality of learning and teaching experiences, and focused on the fact that college lecturers need to be given time to undertake professional learning, to embed that learning in practice, to reflect, to assess and review, and all of that to meet the needs of learners and deliver quality learning and teaching experiences for the students in their classes. Now, when you reflect upon that action that you collectively took and the objectives of professional learning as a professional body and recognised with GTCS, there's a real synergy between the two of them. And I would really ask you to reflect on that when you're thinking about the registration process. I think when we think about the professional standards as well, that's where we kind of dovetail the professional learning experiences. And now we have a situation where GTCS are holding the professional standards. Registration will give you the opportunity to engage in high quality professional learning. And it's learning which should be lecturer led. So you should be reflecting on where it is in your practice that you think professional learning could lead you, what kind of learning you want to undertake, and not just mandatory or tick box learning experiences. It should all reflect the voices of college lecturers and be thought about and reflected upon through a meaningful PRD process and through professional dialogue. So that's another benefit that we see from professional registration. And finally, I think you'll see reference in this slide to investment in TQFE. And for me, I think what the whole multi-agency sectoral, cross-sectoral work of the College Lecturers Registration Working Group has done has been to shed a light on, or really shine a light on, the need for investment in TQFE. We have looked at, as a group, the difficulties which are currently experienced in the service, in the sector, from people waiting years sometimes to access that qualification, and the importance of doing something meaningful that's going to change that. I remember when we negotiated the agreement, the circular that dealt with TQFE, and when we secured back in 2017 the fact that the payment of the fees would be made by the employers, and that the employers would be reducing, given a reduction of 150 hours in class contact time, and the college lecturers would be entitled to one full day of remote class contact during completion of the programme. We thought that was great. But there's another hurdle to that, because although you can have meaningful access to that, you then need to get onto the TQFE. So a major strand of the group has been on looking at that as a barrier to potential registration and how we can move forward in that process. So where are we now? We've looked at the contractual underpinning, the importance of everyone engaging in this, and we've looked at the reasons why EIS-FELA believe that this is an important policy commitment. And now we're at a stage where, having undertaken the pilot projects that I know some of you will have actually engaged on last year, we've learned some lessons from that, and we're in a process to start that national rollout of the programme. So the first part of it will be from the 6th of September this year, and that will be for all lecturers who are holding a TQFE or a recognised primary or secondary qualification. Now, I don't want anybody to think that there is a two-tier system, because there definitely is not. We are still working on pathways and rules for registration for the second tranche, which will be dealt with in April 2022. But as I'm sure Derek might refer to, there are logistical reasons that mean that if there's going to be a change in GTCS rules, then that requires public consultation, and that requires a period of time. So don't think that there's a two-tier stage here. There's definitely not. It's just we need further time to work out the routes to registration and to get those rules right for the second tranche of registration from April 2022. So I'm going to pass over now to Derek, who is going to give you a bit more information about the practicalities of that registration process and what will be involved for you as college lecturers in the next few months as we go ahead. Okay, thanks, Derek.
Thanks, Anne. Good evening, everyone. It's great to be here. For those of you that don't know me, my name is Derek Timpany and I'm one of the Senior Education Officers at GTC Scotland, but I've had a background both in college and secondary school prior to that. So in terms of GTC Scotland, I think it's important just to give you a wee brief overview. So GTC Scotland is the oldest teaching council in the world, having been established in 1965 and is based in Edinburgh. And it was established in response to growing concerns at the time that the teaching profession in Scotland was becoming increasingly uncertified. We are the independent and self-regulating professional body for teaching, and we were made independent of the Scottish Government via legislation passed in 2011, which is known as the General Teaching for Scotland Order. Okay, now our main areas of work are essentially registration, regulation and professional learning. So just to go through some of the bullet points, but we're tasked with maintaining a register of teaching professionals in Scotland, and Anne alluded to the fact that it's really important for us to maintain the integrity of that register. Now at the moment we've got about 76,000 registrants on that register. The vast majority are teachers, but over the next year, 2 years and beyond, depending on how long it takes for us to get everything into place, we're expecting to welcome somewhere in the region of 8,000 lecturers onto the register. We accredit programmes leading to the award of GTCS standards. So in a school context, that's, for example, somebody working towards the standard for provisional registration through the probationary year. But as they then complete that probationary year, they achieve the standard of full registration. In terms of the kind of fitness to teach and the kind of regulation aspect, we're all about providing public protection and assuring the high quality of the teaching profession by investigating and adjudicating on the fitness to teach of registrants through robust and fair regulation. We also set the professional standards, which most of you will be very familiar with at the moment. They were refreshed back in 2018, and they will be refreshed again 5 years later, so 2023. And we also keep an eye on obviously the professional update process, and as Anne said, that's probably more about a discussion for another day, but we will allude to it briefly in this session. And we also advise the Scottish Government in matters relating to teaching in Scotland and Scotland's teaching profession. So in terms of eligibility at this stage, Anne spoke a wee bit about the NJNC agreements, but within the college sector, lecturers are required to register as per the 2017 agreements. And at the moment, the GTCS rules only basically allow those that have a teaching qualification, TQFE or primary or secondary, recognised, and 190 days experience to register. Okay, we appreciate that not everybody has that, and that it's going to be an ongoing journey to get people onto the register. But as Anne mentioned, there'll be a rule change in 2022 in April, where we'll start to look at how we can invite other lecturers onto the register. So at the moment, as of the 6th of September, we're going to bulk upload, which is just a term we use to say we're going to en masse bring people onto the register that have the qualification and the service. And that's easy for us to do that because we just simply get key information from the colleges and they tell us who has the teaching qualification and give us a list of names through a data collection spreadsheet, and then we can upload quite a lot of people. But for those after April 2022, it's going to be a wee bit different. And also for those that have got their qualification out with Scotland, we can look at that on an individual basis. And I think the key message is the people that are qualified outside Scotland or don't have the TQFE or primary or secondary teaching qualification, you don't have to do anything just now. If someone was to contact us, we could look at it on an individual basis, but the advice we're given pretty much is for you guys just to hang fire at the moment, and we'll get round to that in the next tranche in mid-2022. So in terms of current and lapsed registrants, if you're a current registrant and you're on the register, you don't have to do anything. If you've been a registrant before, but that registration is now lapsed, you're going to receive a separate invitation to re-register. And because you're a lapsed registrant, you won't actually have to provide a copy of your TQ again, or indeed confirmation of that, but we'll still need the EPVG update, which is £18. And then you'll be required to pay the fee of £43. Now that £43 is just a part fee to take you up until basically round about April-May time, when obviously it's the new fee year for GTC Scotland, and at that point you would have to pay, at the moment it's a £65 annual fee. Now, although there's no plans to kind of put that up at the moment, it is under review every now and then, so that fee eventually might go up slightly, but for the moment it's just £43 just now, and then your annual fee of £65, which will be due in April-May time. And just a wee note there, registrants that were currently or previously registered in primary or secondary, you will become dual registered. So recently I had posted a kind of screenshot on Twitter that just shows what it looked like. So I initially qualified as a modern studies teacher. So my initial registration with GTC Scotland was secondary registration in the subject area of modern studies. And then just a few weeks ago, I went through the process of registering in further education. So that also appears on my kind of registration status. So that would be the same for you guys if you held a primary or secondary qualification as well. We've been engaging in a hashtag GTCS Registration Ready campaign over the past few months, and that's basically to basically raise awareness of the registration campaign. And in terms of requirements, again, it's nothing new. It's just we're advising people, in order to prepare, just make sure you've got a copy of your TQFE or your primary or secondary teaching qualification, and also have key pieces of identification, your passport, birth certificate or utility bill, and just look them out and have them to hand, because you will be asked to upload certain documents through the registration process. Again, registration part 1, it's really straightforward. Eligible lecturers will be contacted by email from the 6th of September. That contact will go to your college email address. It will come directly from GTC Scotland, and it will give you an individualised link that you can click on to apply. You'll simply complete the form and upload a copy of any of the documents that it asks for example, teaching qualification. No payment required at this stage. We will process the application at our end, and then we'll pass it on to Disclosure Scotland. The second stage, you will receive an automated email from Disclosure Scotland, which will invite you to complete the EPVG. Now, the one thing that I probably would want to highlight here is that once you actually start the EPVG application process, we'd advise you to complete it ASAP, because it is a time-limited link. And for example, if you go out and you decide that you may be looking for a piece of information or something like that, then if you leave it more than 7 days to go back in, the link is going to expire. That's a wee bit different from the GTC application, because as you're completing your application on the link sent to GTC Scotland, you can literally go in and out of that as many times as you like and save it to draft format before you submit. So when you're doing the PVG part of it, just act quite quickly. And some of you may have questions around PVG number, and quite luckily the Disclosure Scotland have changed their process, and that means that previously you needed to have a note of your PVG number, but now you don't. You just need to know your kind of basic personal information and stuff like that. So don't worry if you've lost your PVG form or you can't find your number. Appropriate ID there again, just the kind of standard stuff. And again, the form gives you the opportunity to upload that electronically. And in terms of payment, we'd mentioned before, £18 for an update and £59 for the full PVG. And we were chatting about this offline, and the vast majority of people will actually have be registered with Disclosure Scotland as part of being put in employment. So therefore, we think for the vast majority of people, it is going to be simply the 18 fee update, and that's just the same as it would be for a school teacher. If a school teacher works for Glasgow City Council and then they decide that they're going to work for a school in East Ayrshire Council or Aberdeenshire Council, then as they move local authority, they would be expected to do an EPVG update. So it's just because, many of you will be going on to the register for the first time, and that's why the PVG is important. And also, as it says in the last bullet point there, it's required by law. As I said at the start, we have a regulatory function at GTC Scotland as well. And then the final part, registration part 3, your EPVG will be processed and a copy sent to the lecturer and to us at GTC Scotland. You'll receive an email inviting payment for part year. So as I said, that's £43 for this year. Unique arrangement for session 21-22 only. And then in future years, it will be that £65. Now, what we're trying to do at the moment is obviously initially you'll pay your own fee, but we're trying to work with the employers to set up something known as DAS, deduction at source. And that's the way we do it with local authorities as well, whereby we deduct the registration fee at source from your employer. So that's the system we want to put in place moving forward. It's far easier, far more straightforward, cuts down a lot of work, and also saves a lot of hassle for you guys having to, for example, go on and pay your registration fee by card or whatever and stuff like that. Once you make your payment, you'll be added to the register, and you'll be able to search the register and obviously see your details on there, and you'll receive your MyT GTCS login, which will give you access to things like MyPL, and I'll chat about that in a wee minute. And it was just a wee note. I know we've got Forth Valley people in that were involved in the kind of pilot programme, and it was just to say that, probably some of you may have already been contacted at this stage, but if not, you will also be contacted quite soon for your £43, because the period that you got as being free for being involved in the pilot programme has came to an end now. So we just actually wanted to double highlight that, just in case some people felt they weren't due to pay until the April-May time when the £65 was due. So really just to highlight that. In terms of lessons learned from the pilots, just a few things. Not received email. So, what you can do there is we have a college sector at gtcs.org.uk that you can obviously highlight that to GTC Scotland. Myself, Pam Curry, as Anne mentioned, is also a senior education officer, as is Vicky Robertson. So we're on Twitter, LinkedIn, various forms of social media. Please feel free to contact us via social media, or alternatively just our surname.forename@gtcs.org.uk. If you don't have a copy of your TQFE, what you could do in the first instance is check with your college HR. They may have a copy on file. When you were employed, you maybe gave them a copy. They may have retained that. Some colleges may not have. You could alternatively contact your university. We will accept an email from your university. So if the university was to send in an email that said, Joe Bloggs has achieved a TQFE on such and such a date, and here's a student number, you could upload a copy of that email to the document, your application form, and that's something that would be accepted as well. And if you do miss the EPVG deadline, i.e. you basically take longer than the 7 days to complete it and the link expires, then you'll need to contact GTC Scotland to get that link reissued. And there's other just kind of general concerns we may talk about in the question and answer, just around, the PVG, and individuals maybe have, having some sort of historical conviction or a minor misdemeanor or something in the past that are a wee bit worried about. So, happy to talk about that in the question and answer session. But essentially, what we have is a department within GTC Scotland. It's known as Office of Disposal, whereby certain minor offences are basically looked at by an internal team, and it doesn't actually have to go to any sort of kind of further checks or any fitness to teach hearing or anything like that. So we just really want to really reassure you that we do appreciate that sometimes some people do have wee things that have happened in the past many years ago that they're maybe a wee bit worried about, and we'd advise you just to be honest and complete the paperwork. And unless it's something really serious, we wouldn't even have to contact your employer about it. It would just it would just be dealt with internally. So after registration, what happens then? So in terms of the whole kind of professional kind of learning process, a lecturer with a TQFE has met the professional standards for lecturers in Scotland's colleges, and this, as we know, is the current entry requirement to gain access to GTC Scotland's Register of Teachers. Professional update requires you as lecturers to self-evaluate and reflect on the professional standards throughout your careers, not necessarily to encourage coverage of all the professional standards, but to use as a signpost to guide your professionalism, to deepen your learning, and to enhance your thinking and professional actions to reflect and improve professional practice in learning and teaching. Professional standards should feature in your line manager PRD discussions, between yourself, the reviewee, and your line manager, the reviewer, and should influence your career-long professional learning. You should reflect and plan using the professional standards. And in terms of the standards, again, you will look at all these in your own time, but they're more or less kind of three areas: professional values, professional knowledge and understanding, and professional practice. And when we talk about professional values, we're talking about placing students at the centre, you demonstrating leadership of learning within the classroom environment, and engaging in, professional learning or continuing professional development. When we talk about professional knowledge and understanding, we're talking about having an awareness of the political, social and economic drivers, learning, teaching and assessment theory and approaches, demonstrating different techniques and approaches there, using technology in a relevant and meaningful way that's going to support effective learning and teaching and work in the classroom, having an awareness of student pathways and transitions and supporting young people on the journey to a positive destination, and having an awareness of the importance of quality assurance and improvement. And finally, in terms of professional practice, again, just that commitment to ongoing professional learning, being an inclusive pedagogue and demonstrating inclusive practice with students, partners and external stakeholders, developing a creative and innovative curriculum offering, effective application of digital technologies and nurturing the skills for life, skills for learning and skills for work, and being that critical, reflective and collaborative practitioner. So you will use the professional standards to plan your development needs. You'll get access to MyPL. On MyPL, you'll be able to, basically say what you're doing well, identify areas that you need further development. You can link those areas to the standards. As part of registration with GTC Scotland, you have a responsibility to make sure your employment details and your contact details are up to date. Every 5 years, you'll have to be signed off for professional update by your line manager. And we would expect you to be having a PRD once a year where you are having a coaching, mentoring conversation with your line manager. And through time, GTC Scotland will further develop and introduce more resources to support that process. But I think the key thing from our perspective is really just to say that we will be recording walkthroughs on the system and focusing in on specific aspects of coaching, PRD, guidance for PRD, professional updates, so on and so forth. But at this stage at the moment, what we want to do is really focus all our attentions into the national registration programme and make sure every day that we can get put on the register is on the register at the moment. And then just in terms of, this is a screenshot that shows the college pages of our website. We have a registration ready hub. And on that Registration Ready hub, you'll find presentations from myself and my colleague Vicky Robertson that we delivered at the CDN's Virtual College Expo. You'll have messages from Shona Struthers, the Chief Executive of College of Scotland, Larry Flanagan, General Secretary of the EIS, and Dr. Pauline Stephen, who is the Chief Executive and Registrar of the General Teaching Council for Scotland, just obviously explaining why they feel registration is important. We've also, you may have seen on social media, as part of the GTCS Registration Ready campaign, we've been releasing caption cards from lecturers and college leaders across Scotland, and that's really just giving a wee 25-word statement on why they think it's important as well. And on the college pages as well, we're also populating it with examples of good professional learning and stuff like that as well, just to support you. And there's work going on in the background on things like teacher and lecturer professionalism, compiling a resource called the A to Z of professional learning, where we're actively seeking input from across the sector on good examples of professional learning that can be shared. And there's also an inspiring lecturers e-zine, so you may have already seen that. But we host it on the GTCS website, but obviously if you're a registrant, you also get that emailed to you electronically, and it's a bit like the Teaching Scotland magazine that goes out to teachers, but it's obviously specifically aimed at college lecturers. So I think we've got about 4 issues or so already on the college, on the GTC website. So if you wanted to see what's happened over the last year or so, I would advise you to go to the registration page of the website and just read some of those e-zines. Now, and I know people in Forth Valley that have been involved in the pilot will probably have had those e-zines emailed to them directly.
Thanks, Derek. And equally, we've got an EIS section of the website that's now dedicated to GTCS registration and has got a lot of that information on it, as well as an FAQ section that we're looking to kind of update and just kind of take issues that might be arising from this session as well. And if I can just briefly say a wee bit about PL that Derek spoke about there. I mean, from an EIS perspective, we really believe that professional learning is a major strength in terms of registration, and that it should be predominantly self-directed with the lecturer as the leader of their own learning. And I think some people can be a bit scared about what professional learning means, and it's just to reassure everybody that that can take a number of different forms. It can be chatting with colleagues about their professionalism. It can be talking about, Pam always cites her experience. She used to sit next to, she always tells me, some beauty lecturers in Glasgow Kelvin, and she said there was a 2-hour conversation about, I think, different hairbrushes, which were absolutely professional learning because they were talking about the benefits, the downfalls and all the rest of it. So it can take a number of forms, and you will be doing it as part of your practice, and you might just not realise that you're doing it at the minute. So don't worry about that. I just want to reassure you in those terms. And finally, we're over to yourselves and any questions that you might have. So I'm just going to